We're at the 9 o'clock hour. Mr. Chairman Morris is attending a funeral out of town today and will not be with us. So if you will, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. At this time, I would like to ask Commissioner McCoy if she would lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, we come before you this morning asking for your blessings and your mercy and grace. We're in a time now that we really need blessings and blessings to cover all of us. We ask that you continue to bless this board, give them the right knowledge and the wisdom to be able to make the right decisions for this county and the citizens of this county. Cover us, Lord, and that's my prayer. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. At this time, Mr. Smith, Larry Smith, I believe we are to discuss a request for approval of a change to Somerville Fire Department Relief Fund Board membership.
Yes, good morning. What they're looking at doing is to replace Mr. Harry Corner with Mr. Rodney Gregory to that board. And Mr. Gregory has volunteered to step up to that position.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Okay. Pleasure the board put this on the consent agenda for next week.
Yes, sir.
Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk, if you would do that, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Chad Bean, discuss a request to approve an amendment to the current services agreement with Republic Services.
Good morning, members of the board. This is a contract that we currently have with Republic Services. Republic Services operates and manages and does all our hauling for our 7 convenience sites. They also maintain the equipment and the grounds and provide any reports to us as needed throughout the year. The current contract states the option to extend the agreement for additional 3 years if both parties agree to terms. We have negotiated with them. There would be a 1-year, one-time rate adjustment of 11.49% that equates to $73,587 to cover the hauling costs. But we did negotiate a CPI Consumer Price Index cap of 4%. So we were requesting that we amend this contract, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to address those.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bean this morning? Pleasure board put this on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Clerk, you'll add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Locklear, discuss proposed text amendment, case number plan 2404-00001.
Good morning, Commissioners. And just one quick correction. This is not a text amendment. It will be a request to rezone from the RA30 to the RA20M zoning district, which will be coming before you for the June 17th public hearing. This applicant, Ms. Claudia Elliott, she is applying to rezone an 8.9 acre portion of a 10.62 acre property, which is located off of Tylerstone Drive in Fuquay Arena. It's located between the Victoria Hills Phase 2 subdivision and the Neils Creek Farms. So the site is currently it's unimproved and heavily wooded. The Neils Creek runs to the south there along the rear property line. As such, this is a pretty environmentally sensitive piece of property. There is a map down just one more. Thank you so much. That we have included, and this just gives you an idea here of the extent of the wetland coverage as well as the 100-year floodplain onto the property, which is, of course, because of the proximity to Neils Creek. Next, we'll take a look at the zoning district compatibility. There's a map and a chart provided, and it's just a little further down there, sorry. Perfect, thank you so much. So wanted to take a look at the map just to show that this request coming in for the RA20M is in an area that is exclusively RA30 and RA40 almost. There's conservation zoning there along Neils Creek, and then a little area of conditional zoning there within the town of Lillington. We'll take a look at the other side of the chart. Pretty important here for this case, where you can see the differences between the uses in the RA30 zoning district. A single wide would require a special use permit. A double wide manufactured home would be required to meet certain design criteria, or it would have to get a special use permit. And a manufactured home park is not permitted within the zoning district. In the RA20M zoning district, a single wide manufactured home, double wide manufactured home would be permitted by right, and a manufactured home park could be permitted by way of a special use permit. So those are the big differences here between these two zoning districts. Also included the land use classification compatibility that shows you there. A lot of that area in the dark green is the environmentally sensitive area. So this is not completely compatible with the request is not completely compatible with the land use classification. And further down here, we've got several photos of the site here provided for your review to give you an idea. There's 2 road view pictures as well. You can see this is the access for the property coming off of the Tyler Stone Drive, which is a road that serves that Victoria Hills 2 subdivision. Also included some photos of the surrounding land uses here to give you an idea of the types of homes, land uses in the area. So through staff's evaluation, staff was not able to provide support for this requested rezoning to the RA20M due to the impact. It's incompatible with the land use. Found that it does not enhance or maintain the public health, safety, or general welfare. Also, staff did find that it needed to be evaluated for reasonableness because it was a small scale rezoning with none of the requested zoning district within the vicinity. So at the June 3rd, 2024 Planning Board meeting, the Planning Board did vote unanimously 5-0 to recommend denial of the requested rezoning for the property to the RA20M zoning district. This was, based on staff's evaluation. The Planning Board found that the request for the small scale rezoning would be unreasonable due to the potential impact on the surrounding community and the immediate neighbors. There were a lot of residents who showed up for this Planning Board hearing. There were several of them that spoke. The Planning Board did do a pretty good job of having representatives of some groups, just, kind of in the interest of time, and also letting everybody speak and to be heard at this meeting. And staff is open for any questions. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
It appears to me, in looking at the GIS, they don't have an ingress egress to this tract of land. It's landlocked.
Well,
What do they plan to do about that?
So currently they are served, it's a 30-foot wide private easement that comes from Tyler Stone Drive. As you can see from the photos too included, there it is gravel. It is a gravel road. So it's not paved with asphalt, but they do have legal deeded access. It's just not with a.
So let me get this straight.
Yes, sir.
They want to put in a mobile home park with a dirt road. Yeah, that's what we need in Hardy County.
Well, I just have a comment. Well done. I agree with the planning board. That's all I gotta say.
Any other questions? Okay, this will be on the agenda for the regular meeting next week, which will include a public hearing. Following that, we will take action on this. Good with that.
Chairman, based on the attendance that was at the last meeting, in discussion with Chairman Morris, we're going to limit speaking to 5 minutes on this item. We'll put it in the notice, just because of the number of speakers that we had last time, in order to ensure that we allow time for all that want to speak but not have it go so long.
Sounds good. I also think it would be wise if we have a large number, if we ask if they would select one or two speakers
Yes.
to represent.
And they
other
did at
groups.
the last meeting, they did have designated speakers for some of the groups, and so hopefully that will limit it as well. We also have reserved a room downstairs and intend to be able to simulcast downstairs if we have a very large crowd. We're limited to 123 in this room, so if we have more than that, they'll have to go downstairs or
Sounds
stand in
good.
the hallway.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Okay, item 7, consider approval of the updated personnel ordinance. Ms. Lane?
Okay, so I'm going to go line by line, and Jamie's already got it up there for us. So in your packet, you received the marked draft that Jamie has up this morning, and then I sent over a clean copy because that's easier to read, and then I sent a summary of changes to the personnel ordinance. So I'm going to use that as my outline to go line by line. So first off, the process to update the ordinance, it was a group effort of myself, the county manager, and our senior staff attorney, because it had been quite a while for the personnel ordinance had been updated. Then after that, when we did our changes, we sent to all department heads and got their feedback as well, and then made a few adjustments after that. So that has been our process this far. Throughout the ordinance, you're going to see that some of the references to the articles and subsections were not correct, so all of those have been corrected, and you'll see that with the red markings. Also, throughout the ordinance, we've added references to the deputy county manager, anywhere the assistant county manager title existed, and that way we're including all the titles in the county administration now. So that's going to be changes throughout. So then to start, so at the intro on Roman numeral VI, the Harnett County Vision Mission was updated to match the new strategic plan. So simply removed all of the prior wording and added the new strategic plan goals. I'm sorry, mission, vision, core values, and strategic goals. So you'll see that in the intro on VII through, yeah, VI and VII. Any questions on that part? Okay. Okay, so then we're at Article 1, the organization of the personnel system. So that is on page 1 of the marked up copy. So in section 2 there, where it says coverage, you'll see there are several articles that make a reference to Article 14. That article does not exist, so not really sure how that got in there. So we've made those corrections to state Article 13 because that's the relevant section to each of those A through E. All right, in section F on the next page, we suggested removing where it states employees and members of the Harnett County Board of Education. Those employees are not employees of the county, and we're not really sure why that was in the ordinance, so the suggestion was to simply remove that. Down below that, items B and C were added. The local public health director is exempt from Article 9 and 10, and so is the director of social services. We felt that we needed to add that in as the others because they are exempt from the disciplinary policy and the grievance policy due to the fact that they report to a separate board. So we've added those. Item F. We've added the provision for Board of Election employees exemption, and that's due to recently the county adopting that MOU. So because of that, we've added that in here. All right, so moving on to definitions. We have added at the bottom of whoops. Page 4, under the hiring rate. So we have simply added at the end of that paragraph to say, at times, this may be adjusted based on education and experience. And we've added that because sometimes there is a need to bring in a qualified, experienced individual at a higher rate than the minimum of the pay grade. So because if somebody comes in with 15 years of experience and a degree, that we will start them above the minimum. So we've added that in here as well. Any questions so far? And then on page 5, this definition was added. If you all remember, back on May 1st of 2023, we added some pay plan provisions. So that definition came from that new update. And so that is defining what a key position is, and that is related to the retention pay increase. So we've added that was already approved. All right, then moving to page 8. Under the responsibilities of the Board of Commissioners, so we've added G and H as it relates to the Board of Elections, and this is because of the MOU, and we just simply stated with the North Carolina General Statute 16335 and 16333, so we've added those two in here for G and H.
Excuse me, what are those? Don't tell me.
I'm sorry?
What did you add? It doesn't
Oh,
tell me exactly what
so-
you added.
On page 8, near the bottom, I've added item G and H. And it's in the red print under where it says the Board of Commissioners are responsible for making and confirming appointments specified by law. However, this power is limited to the following instances. At the bottom of that, there's G and H in red. Those two things were added. There was already one statement there, but we just updated it to the current general statute, what it states. Okay. All right, so now we're in Article 3, the pay plan, which starts on page 10 of the changed draft. In Section 6, which is on page 11, we added the statement there in red that says, in the event of a work status change, which is a promotion, demotion, lateral transfer, et cetera, that happens at the same time as a performance pay increase, the work status change will be effective the day after the performance pay plan increase. This will help us align the internal process and the ordinance that the date of the increase for the PPP should always take effect the first day of the new pay period, which is the 16th. So essentially, PPPs will still remain on the first day of the pay period on the 16th. Anything work status change, so if somebody gets promoted, that will be the day after on the 17th. And in practice, that's what we had been doing, but it always seemed to be a continuous question. Somebody would get a PPP and a promotion, which is a good thing, but it was always confusing of which came first. Right under that section as well, we've added the statement, the employee's original hire date. And this is as it relates to the PPP, because we have a lot of movement of employees that change from full-time to part-time and then back again. So as before, it was using the work status change date. So let's just say if an employee changes status multiple times throughout the year, they could end up going for a long period of time without getting an increase. So we decided to keep it as the anniversary date forever, no matter if their work status change. And then we removed any references to the 3-5 plan as that's no longer in effect. So that section has been removed, or any, part of that. On page 12 at the top, we've added in that the part-time employees are also eligible for the performance pay plan, as that was the intent and has been the practice all along, but it was not included in the last amended ordinance. So we've added that in there, that part-time employees are eligible. as well. However, with the caveat is that they must have worked uninterrupted for the last 12 months preceding the anniversary date. We removed consecutive years because it should be the preceding 12 months of work. However, we also needed to add in that that will not apply to a leave of absence that is protected by federal or state law, and that's due to someone being out on FMLA. So if someone's on protected leave, they're still due their PPP when they return. So those were the additions there. And then moving to section 8, on the next page, page 13. The promotion section, we made that to match the new promotion pay that was approved by the Board of Commissioners on 5/1. So at the very bottom under promotion, I marked out the old policy and then added in the new policy that was approved on May 1st of 2023, and that was for the promotions. On the next page, page 14, under reclassifications, that wording was also updated on May 1st of 2023 and approved by the Board of Commissioners. So I simply added in that revision under reclassifications, under item B. It was just rewording to say any employee who is currently above the minimum pay rate of their current position, and the position is then reclassified to a grade having a higher salary or hourly range, the employee's salary or hourly wage shall be appropriately adjusted to the same percentage above the minimum pay rate in the new pay range. So that was, to us, more clear. At the very bottom of that page, I added in the retention increase pay plan. And again, that was a part of that section that you guys approved on May 1st of 2023. Okay, so moving on to section 17, which is on page 20. At the very bottom where it talks about overpayment, and then as it relates to terminations, we've added, and shall not reduce the gross wages paid to a rate less than minimum wages defined by law. And of course, that's due to the North Carolina Department of Labor wage and hour regulations. We're not able to make certain deductions that would bring someone's gross wages to be less than the current minimum wage rate. Okay. And then we are at Article 4, Recruitment and Employment. So on page 23, we updated the EEO statement and the anti-discrimination statement. And so removed the prior policy, and this whole front page is new, or this new section's new. And it updates the list of individuals who are protected, and then all of the employment relationships where individuals are protected. And then have the Americans with Disability Act added in, and the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, and how to ask for an accommodation. So that's on page 23. Okay, on page 24, under section 4, submitting applications for employment. We removed all references to the Employment Security Commission, as we do not use that agency. We removed the reference to the applicant being directly informed of availability of current job openings. We no longer are able to do that. Now this is automated. They can go online, and interested applicants must visit the website or click on our QR code to apply. Okay, page 25. Under qualification standards, updated some of the wording there. So we added the wording job description to replace the salary grading system, because the job description is what sets the minimum standards for each role. And we removed the wording position overview, because we take those recommendations from the supervisor or department head. All right, under section 6, under the selection, and that second paragraph there, We replaced the list of protected individuals with the wording in accordance with the EEO policy, and that's going to prevent repeating of the list of protected individuals throughout the ordinance. And in the future, when EEO comes out with a new list of protected individuals, we're only going to make updates to that one section in the policy. And then near the bottom, still under section 6, under the selection process, next to the last paragraph, we've added in, because it said the county manager has the final approval, we said reserves the right, as he doesn't want to have the final approval or disapproval of any, of all new hires, that he delegates that to the department heads. So we just said that he has the authority or reserves the right to have it. Okay. Section 8, under the probationary period of employment on page 26, in that second paragraph, we reworded that to state a newly promoted employee will serve a probationary period of 6 months. The way it was worded before kind of left for interpretation and doubt, because it simply said a newly promoted employee will serve. So, I'm sorry, it said a full-time employee serving. So that really wasn't clear to us. So we've changed it to a newly promoted employee will serve. And so we know for sure. The next one is that we've added supervisors and department heads must document and provide the list to Human Resources. We removed the county manager as he's delegated that to the respective department and to Human Resources. And that's in documenting right before the completion of the probationary period, that they have to document to us all of those things, A, B, C, D there. If the employee's been informed of the performance, are there any weaknesses, and so on. Okay, on page 27, still in section 9, the promotion, that statement there where it states there is no time restriction on how long after initial employment or promotion an employee must wait before he or she may apply for other positions in the county. That was already in the ordinance, but it was stuck back in the appendix, and so we felt it was important to pull it out and put it where it was relevant. So no change in words there, we just moved the location. Okay, on page 28, under section 13, the employment of convicted felons. So we did make 2 changes there. We are suggesting to remove item D. And right now that reads, the applicant's record does not include more than 1 instance of a felony conviction or a no contest plea. And the reason why we're suggesting to remove that is sometimes we see individuals that have had one bad day and there's multiple charges stemming from one day where there's multiple breaking in and entry, multiple theft. However, then they plea to something lesser, and then sometimes it looks like multiple dates or multiple convictions, whether it's just one, and then sometimes they haven't had anything since then, right? So we really want to look at what the dates were, what the convictions were. However, if they have that and then there's something every year after that, then we probably would not consider bringing them in, and also the time. However, we felt that just to make a blanket statement that it can't include more than 1 is tough for someone who has had one event and it's multiple charges stemming from that. We're also suggesting to remove item E, where it says the applicant's record while in custody of the Department of Corrections or other law enforcement agency, was great and without problem. This is due to simply we don't have access to this information and we can't get it. So we decided that we needed to remove that. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so section 14, the driving record and verification. We've added the exemption for a non-resident military spouse needing a valid driver's license, for North Carolina valid driver's license, as they are exempt from that. However, we did add an exception in there or as a safety net, that if someone comes with an out-of-state license, they fall under this exemption. If they have any traffic violations, they have to report it into the department head and to Human Resources immediately. Okay, so now we are in Article 5, under Conditions of Employment. So under Section 2, the work week on page 29, we've added that the department head has the authority to grant an adjusted lunch schedule as it aligns with the operations of the department. And that's because sometimes an employee can't take a lunch break during the typical hours of, let's just say 11 and 1:30. They have a doctor's appointment in the afternoon and would like to use their lunch at 4 o'clock for an appointment. So we've added that in. All right, Section 3, gifts and favors. So we've suggested removing this from the ordinance, and that's only because we have a separate conflict of interest policy that all employees sign at the time of new hire, as well as board members and sometimes contract workers. So this language is already contained in the conflict of interest, which is an external policy. So we were suggesting to remove it from here because not only employees need to sign it, but also board members and contractors. Okay, so on page 31, under Section 6, unlawful harassment, we have updated this entire policy to expand what verbal and nonverbal forms of harassment are. We also changed the title where it said policy procedures to state reporting procedures, just so that employees can be clear on that's how to report any form of unlawful harassment. All right, under Section 7, on page 34, we added the wording after where it says drug-free workplace policy to say general class of employees. And that is because the next section, 9, the drug and alcohol testing, that's for employees with a CDL, hearts, and safety-sensitive positions. And so Section 8 was retitled to say general class of employees. And then we added the new policy from Hearts that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners and approved on 2/19 of 2024. So that next section where it says drug and alcohol testing, that came right from the document that you all approved. I didn't make any changes to that other than formatting so it would be consistent with the rest of the ordinance. And that is a long policy. It's 20 pages. So we're going now to page 54, Jamie. All right, so on page 54, so we had an internet access policy, sorry. And so we are suggesting to delete that because IT now has a new technology use policy that all employees and some contractors and temporaries sign when joining the county. They developed it last year in 2023. So since that is separate and they are always changing that as technology changes and updates happen, for us to remove that from the ordinance and keep their policy separate. So we're suggesting to simply delete that section. Section 10 was the cell phone use policy, and that's on page 55. We are also suggesting to delete that policy as well. HR and Finance, we've talked about it. The Finance policy is rolling out a new policy and a new form that will both encompass employees who are issued a county-owned phone and employees who receive a reimbursement for their personal phones. So there'll be a new policy coming out with that, the uses, and how they're going to seek reimbursement. So we're suggesting to take this out of the ordinance as well. Okay,
Excuse me.
ma'am.
If you take it out of the ordinance, who makes the decision on own policy?
Well, each department head would come up with a new policy and present it to the Board of Commissioners for approval for their
Okay.
policy, yeah. Because I'm pretty sure you guys approved the technology use policy, and the new cell phone reimbursement policy would go before the board for approval as well.
But that's the reason I'm asking.
Yeah.
We have dealt with that before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the plan. Okay, the next section, workplace violence prevention policy. Again, this policy was already in the ordinance, but it was placed in the back in the appendix. So I've simply removed that original policy to the main body of the ordinance, and we did not make any changes to that language, just changed the location of it. Okay, so now on page 60, under section 14, the uniform policy, this was another policy that was stuck in the appendix in the back of it, and we simply removed it to the main body. We did make one small change to that last paragraph. We changed the wording to state that the employees will be charged rather than collected, as in some instances that's difficult and we may have a wage and hour violation. So we can't automatically, unfortunately, deduct from someone's paycheck when they don't return uniforms. However, if we can get their signature, then at that time we would be able to withhold, or we would have to invoice them for any unreturned uniforms. Okay, the next section, reasonable accommodation. So that is a new policy, and we have added this in, and that's at the bottom, yeah, at the bottom of page 60. That's in order to be compliant with ADA and the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and Title VII. And then we've also added in the provision for retaliation. So those next two pages is the reasonable accommodation, how someone's going to request accommodation, and that there's no retaliation for them doing so. So that is a new policy. Section 16 on page 61 is also a new policy, and that's the lactation break policy. We've already been accommodating and providing that for our employees that need that. We felt now that it's important that we're updating the ordinance, so we might as well put that in here. And so they will know who to go to ask for breaks, where to go, and how breaks will be handled. And that continues on to page 62. And the next article, so we're at Article 6 on page 62, Section 1, under leave of absence. We reworded that the middle paragraph just to state that during the holiday season, the county must remain open. So the county may not be able to allow multiple employees for an extended period of time during the busy season, meaning to take vacation. We usually do first come, first serve, or by seniority. I think each department may do it different. Okay, on page 63, it has been suggested under the holidays to add a new holiday, and that would be Juneteenth. And of course, that is up for the board's consideration and approval. We could consider adding that or consider continuing to follow what the state does. So currently, right now, our holidays are decided by the state. So this would be adding one that the state's not following right now. Uh-oh, what happened, Jamie?
My computer went black up
Page
here.
63?
63? Okay.
I
My
said,
computer
oh,
went dark
oh,
and I was like,
no.
oh gosh, where did it go?
Good, that means I can have water while you're finding.
Hello? Are you sure the state doesn't have Juneteenth?
The last time we checked, they did not yet. Now, they may be doing it with their new fiscal year. They said they were not.
I thought they was added last year. I'm not sure, but,
They told me they did not.
okay,
Okay, but they may have changed that.
okay.
I think they may have a floating holiday that employees can choose what extra holiday they want to take. I think that's
Oh,
what
maybe
they told me.
that's
Yeah, they said that they gave a floating and an employee can use it however they want. Okay. So that's the holiday. Okay, so moving to page 64. We have added item E, kind of middle of the page. And so we've added that if an employee is suspended without pay, that they will not be compensated for a holiday that falls during a suspension. We feel that we should add this because if an employee is suspended, it's usually used as a form of a disciplinary action, and that the individual should not be compensated for the holiday if the suspension falls within the holiday period. And that seems to be a question almost every holiday, unfortunately. All right, on page 66, under vacation leave, under the section where it says maximum allowance, so we changed the date of the actual rollover of the vacation to sick, because we made this date match what finance follows, and that's because of our systems. The rollover in this system happens on 7/15, not 6/15. And so this change was at the request of our finance officer to make these changes. Okay, on page 68, under petty leave. Okay, so changing of the words again. So we said it begins with the February 1st pay period, as that's the time that the system shows the hours for the employee to view the leave. And again, this change was at the request of our finance officer. Again, and just saying unused petty leave will not be eligible to roll over to the next year. So we just reworded this section and didn't change the amount or the intent of it. Okay, section 7, leave without pay. And the change on this one is at the top of 69. So we added the word personal for educational needs to clarify that it must be the employee's own educational needs. And this is the reason why they would ask for a leave without pay. We added that the county manager approval for any other reasons deemed appropriate, as there's a need to provide clarity for what the other reason would be. Because the intent of leave without pay was not just for one day off here and there, that it's for a longer leave time once all other forms of leave has been exhausted. And then the paragraph where it says failure to return to work, we took off that last sentence. Because when the position becomes vacant, of course, we start recruiting for that. So we just kind of ended this sentence, if failure of an employee to report to work once their leave has expired shall be considered a resignation period, and we took off the last piece of that sentence. Okay, so now we're going to page 75, under FMLA, section 13. And the first change happens on page 77. We removed son and daughter and put child in there to cover that relationship. And then the next change is on page 81. We have added item G. And so this is a provision under FMLA rules that employer can require employees who both work for the county to split the 12 weeks in certain circumstances. And that's spelled out in G. Here it says spouses who work for the county will share a total of 12 work weeks of FMLA for the birth of a child, placement of a child for adoption or foster care, or care for a parent with a serious health condition. Or for military leave. So out of items 5 and 6, they would have to split the 12 weeks. And for item 7, if it's for their own serious health condition, that they each would get their own 12 weeks. And this usually comes up when 2 employees work for the county and they have a child, so both would not get 12 weeks, so would need to split the 6 weeks somehow. And
Only applies to having a child, right?
I'm sorry?
This only applies to having a child, right?
Yeah, a child or a adoption or foster, or if they need to care for a parent with a serious health condition. So those 3 situations. So like if 2 people are caring for a parent, they would need to split it, the 12 weeks. And in practice, this is what we've been doing because this is the FMLA law. Because in the beginning of the FMLA policy, it states that if our policy differs from FMLA, from federal law, we follow the federal law. So in practice, we've been following making them split the 12 weeks. But most situations we deal with is birth of a child or adoption. Okay, so now we're moving to page 81. Okay, at the bottom, adverse weather policy. Okay, so we changed all the references in this section to read inclement weather leave. Some years ago, we added a new leave and a new pay code that separates inclement weather leave from administrative leave. You know, we call usually administrative leave is something like a form of a disciplinary action, administrative leave with pay or without pay. And so we've added a new pay code, or did some years ago, and we've been calling it adverse weather. And so in the next several pages where it says the adverse weather, administrative, I've changed it to inclement weather because that's what we're referring to it as now. And every time we have an inclement weather event, it always comes up to be a question of what leave do they take? Okay. The next change is on page 85 under section 15, volunteer leave. So right now, employees get 1.5 hours per week each month. And so we've added that they can take a lump sum total of 6 hours to combine that 4.5 hours. The 1.5 hours for 4 weeks for 6 hours. And the thought behind that was that way they can help with a larger project like a Habitat for Humanity house build where 1.5 hours is not going to be enough, but 6 hours would make a difference. But still with the same provisions that the hours don't accumulate or roll over. The other item we added in here was it says, or any nonprofit organization that has an event in Harnett County. And that was because the Senior Games, their 501(c) is in another county, but they had an event here in Harnett County. So a lot of employees had questions. Could they use the volunteer leave or could they not? We said they could because there's an event here in Harnett County. Okay, so now we're at Article 7. Page 86. So Section 1, insurance benefits. So we replaced a lot of this wording because some of it was outdated. It still referred to medical insurance as hospitalization. So we changed that wording to say medical and dental. Item B, we've added in vision because I think at the last time of the ordinance, vision was not an option. We have that now, so I've added that in. Under item C, we rearranged that wording. Before it said retirement health benefits, and we've changed that now to state health benefits and retirement. So some employees really get health benefits covered by the county in retirement and their orbit, their state retirement. They're getting the word benefits mixed up and not truly understanding what that meant. So we felt that rewording that would help better be more easily understood when reading it. So that was item C. And then item H, we added the COBRA statement as we needed to do that. Page 87. So there's a chart there for retirement health benefits. Oh, sorry. Oh. So under that chart, we didn't change the intent of consecutive years. However, there was always some confusion about what that meant. So we've added the definition. Do I need to stop? Keep going.
Hold on a second.
It's like we were so close. We were over halfway through. So close. I was like, I blew up the system talking.
Intermission.
Oh, I don't want to start over. No. I don't want to do over.
It's current with what we're discussing.
Do they have the hard copy? Like, do they have the hard copy printout of the changes, maybe?
Not the one you sent me yesterday. Did
Okay.
not print it.
Oh, no. Okay. Okay. Is it just not going down at all?
I can scroll, but nobody can see it up here. All these screens are really big.
Okay.
Hope you're getting any ideas down there, Lisa. I see you. You're like, oh.
We're gonna kill some trees. I mean, we can.
Or you guys can join us up here and then you can use some.
Right?
Oh.
I mean, I can still control it from here.
I mean, you got it. I've got it.
Yeah.
I can still scroll through. I still have control of the big screens.
It came back the first time.
Page
Yeah,
120.
second time, that was a warning shot.
That's where we're at.
Just one error. Plug it into R.
Broke it. I broke it.
Ben's, if y'all do want to, so we can
Is there a way to hook it? Plug it into mine.
all this
Uh,
separate boxes.
Just reboot the computer.
Can you and Barbara look on yours?
Yeah.
Matt and I can look.
You pulled it up on your laptop?
I think Lou and Barbara can look on.
I'm going to share this one.
Lou's. I got mine.
You got yours? Okay. All right. Sounds
I
good.
think we-
I got my computer too, if somebody wanted it.
Okay.
Okay.
But
All right, so
Commissioner
he's
Ford,
pulling
can you
his
look
up.
The one
at,
here's gonna be
Commissioner
slightly
Witherspoon
new,
there?
because there was a.
Oh, there's Ben.
And what was published on the agenda, there's a small word change.
Perfect timing.
I was
So-
like, it's Ben's fault.
Now watch it. He's just gonna get to it.
Can't take off here.
Courthouse somewhere. You hit that box?
Maybe.
somehow.
It's probably be on.
Do I?
Sabotage.
Here we go.
There we go.
We're in.
There we go. All right, 86.
Hey, next time I'll know how to fix it.
Are we in business now? Is it working?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yep.
yes, okay. Phew,
Somebody had a
okay.
big knee.
All right. Okay. All right, so we were on page 87. So we're talking about the consecutive years of service as it relates to getting the medical coverage into retirement. And so I've added underneath these charts on both pages 87 and 89 that the minimum years of consecutive Harnett County service is defined as the period of an employee's continuous and uninterrupted employment with the county commencing on his or her most recent hire date through his or her retirement date. So again, uninterrupted years of service. The next section underneath.
Excuse me. I
Yes.
think if you'll read that again, it reads interrupted
Oh,
service.
okay. Confession, there was a typo in what I emailed you, and I called it yesterday and corrected it in the correct versions on the
Okay.
screen. Yes, sir. Yep. So I totally caught
Oh,
that
yeah, I see.
typo when I met with
Yeah.
Rebecca yesterday. So it does now say uninterrupted.
Mine's like that.
Underneath there, we've also added the employees who are affected by a reduction in force or a layoff who return to work when called back to the county within 1 year of their departure will be considered as having continuous service as it relates to continuing medical benefits into retirement. And so that was a suggestion by our county manager to add that provision in as well. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay. So then moving to page 88. So again, changing the wording there to say health benefits during retirement. So just did a rearrangement of that sentence. So under item G, it used to state if the unpaid premium amount due is only for dependent coverage, then only the dependent coverage will be canceled. We are suggesting to remove that because as the county, we do not allow dependents to stay on the plan if the employee in retirement doesn't elect it. So that has never applied, so we're suggesting to remove that. Okay, then on page 91, under section 8, it used to read supplemental retirement income. Our provider, Empower, who handles our 401k, asked us to change that section and use the proper names. It is technically called the NC 401k plan and the NC 457 plan. So in this section, I've reworded it to state what it's truly called now. And the last sentence of that, I believe at the top of 92, we added the statement that in addition to the NC 401k plan, all employees, regardless of Leader's eligibility, are allowed to contribute to the NC 457 plan, as that is a new provision. It wasn't added in the ordinance prior to this change. So even though they're part-time without retirement, they can still contribute a small amount to the 457. Okay, now we're at Article 8, under separations, departures, and reinstatements at the bottom of page 92. So under section 1, we've added that sentence again to say, in situations of suspension without pay, employees are not permitted to use compensatory vacation or sick time, nor will he or she receive holiday pay. So just reiterating that. Okay, under item B, also under suspension, we remove the reference to sending something certified mail and filing with the county manager. As for the disciplinary action report, we file that in the employee's file within the HR department. We do not send a certified copy or file at the county manager's level. We keep it in human resources, and we always give a copy of the disciplinary action report form to the employee at the time of the meeting, so that's always delivered in hand. So we have restated that here in section B. Okay, so now we're at Article 9, under Disciplinary Action Plan, page 95. So under Section 2, Disciplinary Actions, so we have added this section, this is a new section, and added per the county manager's request, Due to situations that arise where individuals that are listed out in this next paragraph may be dismissed for unsatisfactory job performance issues without going through the 3 written rules. So our disciplinary policy typically it's right now, it's an oral and 2 writtens and then termination. So the individuals listed out in this section would be exempt from that. So, and that states, and I'll read that here, the deputy county manager, assistant county manager, and directors, we call them department heads, are not subject to the 3 warning rule as outlined in section 6B of this article, and may be subject to adverse action without prior written warning or other written notice in the employee's personnel file. However, there shall be an action or condition relating to unsatisfactory job performance as outlined in section 6BC, to take any form of adverse action against any of these employees. These employees are not subject to the grievance policy as outlined in Article X or Article 10. However, affected employees may appeal an adverse action to the Board of Commissioners. If an affected employee is terminated or involuntarily resigns pursuant to Section 6B of this article, the employee shall receive a severance of a minimum of 3 months with a max of 6 months of their then existing salary as determined by the county manager. The severance package shall also include all other benefits of the regular payroll schedule, including health insurance. These employees shall not be eligible for severance if the adverse action is for just cause or unsatisfactory or contrary personal conduct as outlined in Section 6A and 6C of this article. Any questions on that? Okay, so moving to Section 4. Under responsibilities of department heads, supervisors, assistant county manager, and deputy county manager, we have added that any formal disciplinary action the supervisor cannot or is not authorized to use any formal disciplinary action without the approval of the department head, because we do want department heads involved in any adverse action or formal disciplinary write-up. Then there's 2 writtens. We're suggesting that we change that oral to a written warning, because essentially we're asking them to document an oral warning, and that is a written warning. So we're asking or suggesting to say 3 written warnings. So the first offense would be an initial written warning, no longer an oral, because it's still documented. The second offense would be a second written warning, and the third offense would be a third and final warning. So again, just changing that because we are documenting it anyway. And we're just going to call it what it is because we are documenting it, and it is a written warning.
Yeah, you document it, but it still doesn't fit into the equation, because if you give them a verbal warning, that one verbal warning will sometimes straighten the person out. But when you start giving them written warnings, and give 3 written warnings, first written warning, second written warning, the third you're out. So why eliminate the verbal warning? If you're dissatisfied, go to the employee and tell them that you're dissatisfied with their work. That gives them the opportunity to do better. Then if they don't do better, then you know they need that first verbal written warning.
Because sometimes the departments were calling an oral warning and they weren't completing the form.
But then that's the manager's fault.
Yes.
He needs to correct that. Anybody that's head of a department is not doing what is required of them, then the manager's supposed to be the one to correct that.
Maybe the manager needs a verbal warning.
So what?
I said maybe the manager needs a verbal warning.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm trying to be fair to the employees of the county.
Yeah, we can.
If they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and you don't give them a verbal warning, then what is it? When they get a written warning, they say, "Well, nobody told me that I was doing something wrong."
Yeah, we still encourage them to have coaching sessions before even a write-up happens. So, and we also have PIPs in place too. So I always suggest, does the person need to be put on a performance improvement plan? Please have those because they're not documenting the counseling, but we can most certainly keep it as a oral written if that's what
Well, I think you
would
should. I
prefer?
think you should do some
Okay.
kind of documentation there. And I think that warns the employees. Sometimes employees don't know they're making the wrong move. They're doing things in the wrong way. So a verbal warning might eliminate the people getting terminated.
Okay.
Ms. Lane, following up
Yes.
on Commissioner McCoy's comment there, would it not be documenting that verbal conversation if the second offense you have the written warning, you refer back to the previous verbal warning that you had initially?
Yes, the
That
form,
establishes
yeah.
the first. Second one is the written one, and
Yeah.
you've got the third strike sitting.
Yes, so our form absolutely has a check the box kind of to say you were issued an oral warning on this date, now you're getting a written on this date. So yeah, so you can easily track what all the warnings are.
But that's acceptable.
Okay. All right, but the preference is to keep it as oral, written, and written.
Yeah, but
Okay.
some point in there, you gotta give a written warning. You don't wait till the first warning, written warning.
Yeah,
He's not doing his job, he needs to know it.
yeah, okay.
I mean, that's just my opinion.
And I understand what Commissioner McCoy is saying, that I could see someone saying, well, why didn't you just tell me rather than writing me up, put this in my file? So this does open the door to be able to have that verbal conversation. But at the same time, you can, if it doesn't improve or there's further deficiencies, you can always document that conversation once that next warning becomes written.
Yes, so we do ask them to document that, absolutely. Okay, all right, I've written that down in my notes. Okay, so on page 98, under the adverse action conference, we've added that department head must provide a written notice to the employee that is facing adverse action. And that written notice should outline all the unsatisfactory job performance or unsatisfactory or contrary personal conduct that will be discussed. This will allow the employee time, usually 1 day notice, to understand and gather their findings to explain or support their side of the situation or what has caused the behavior to occur. I think some departments were doing it verbally to say, hey, we're going to sit down and figure this out tomorrow, but we would rather the employee receive that in writing so that they know what they're standing against. Okay, so Article 12 on page 105. Okay, under Section 3, Public Access to Personal Records, we simply updated F and updated G and H. We updated that language to match the North Carolina General Statute 153A98. So they had some updates, so we just simply updated what's in the ordinance to match what that states. All right, so Article 13, which starts on page 106 and 107. So the suggestion was to remove the section, as we would no longer need the chairman's signature each time we make a change to a policy. Any changes would still require Board of Commissioners approval, and after that approval, it would be added to the ordinance. But at that time, each time we would do that, which hopefully this time we're going to stay up to date on these changes. So as the board approves items, they will be put in the ordinance at that time. But each time we do that, it wouldn't need to be signed. So that was another suggestion we had. And then the appendix, which was a lot of pages, lots of pages. And I'll run down each of these. So page 108, that driver disclosure form, we no longer use that form, and it's an electronic form now. So this form is obsolete. On page 110, the workplace violence prevention policy, that's one of the policies. It looks like it's been deleted here, but remember it was moved to the main body of the ordinance. Page 118, the drug and alcohol policy, and actually this is the old one. So we move that to the main body of the ordinance, as well as use the one that you, the Board of Commissioners approved back in February this year. Page 129, we removed the personal cell phone use reimbursement form as there is a new form coming out. Page 134, we have a new injury investigation report form, and we have added that. This is the new form on page 134. And we've already rolled this form out to the managers and supervisors to help us when injuries occur to gather additional information that we need in a timely fashion. Page 145, I will need to go back and change that to add the oral back in here. So here's a copy of that form. So when an employee faces discipline, as you can see here, but the types of offenses, there was a long list before. And so we've updated this discipline for just cause, discipline for unsatisfactory job performance, or discipline for unsatisfactory or contrary or personal conduct. Those are outlined in the discipline policy. So we shortened that list that it should be one of these options. So I'm going to go back and change where it says first written warning, where it says previous and current warnings. I will go back and change that to keep it an oral warning. Okay, on page 147, the employee information form. That form is now electronic through our onboarding system, so we no longer use that form as well. So we're going to delete that out. So pages 148 through 154, these were miscellaneous policies that have the check the box, and all of these were redundant. They were already in the ordinance, but for some reason, I have no idea how this check the box got in here, but it is, and it's all redundant with the exception of the 4 things I've added back to the main body that we've already talked about, and that was the time restriction on how long after initial employment or promotion that an employee must wait before they apply for another position, the COBRA statement, the tobacco use policy, and the uniform policy. So those 4 I have put back in the main body of the ordinance. And so this check the box will go away because they're signing the ordinance entirely. Page 155, that last form, the employee information release form. Again, that is now an electronic form that is completed in the NeoGov onboarding system. So there's no need for the paper form anymore. So we are taking that out. And last but not least, we've added a signature page, and that has the acknowledgement. So our plan is once the board approves the ordinance, to roll this out to the employees so they have access to this, and then each employee will sign a new acknowledgement stating that they have read the newest and latest version. That was a lot, right?
I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
You did a great job, and
I have to admit, it was much easier than wading through all that stuff on my own, so I appreciate it.
It was definitely, I call it a labor of love.
Yes.
but I do have one question.
Okay.
You and I talked about it.
Yes.
You know what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is it in this policy that you read?
So I didn't make any changes yet, but the nepotism, you know, we talked about the nepotism. Is that's the first one we talked about?
Yeah,
So I didn't.
nepotism is a problem in this county, and it's been ever since I've been here. I was born here. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you can't hire family members, but it should be some process there.
Yeah. So on page 31, Jamie, I think, hold on. So yes, when you and I talked, we have the employment of relatives on page, it is page 31. So section 6, where it talks about the employment of relatives, yes, so you and I talked about living in a rural county, that's so hard. It's so.
No, it's not. It's not. It doesn't have nothing to do about living in a rural county. Nepotism is when department heads hire their own families. Now, I don't have anything against hiring family, but they should not work in the same department.
Yeah, they should not do that because of this section, because it says, however, regardless of this exception, a family member of the immediate family, well, I'm reading the wrong one. Okay, as an exception, members of the same immediate family may be considered for employment if significant recruiting problems exist. But it goes on to say here, if it would result in one member supervising the other or occupying a position which could influence the other's employment. So a department head should never be allowed to hire a relative based on that last paragraph. They should not be, because it's not allowed. I don't know.
Well, you have this written here, it don't sound like to me it's not allowed. Where you have here in this policy. I'm just one commissioner up here. And the county manager. But I think it creates problems. And I don't see any county head of an agency here in this county hiring their own family to work in their own department. And that has happened.
Okay. Yeah, I have not been aware of that for the last 2 years, or have not been made aware of it. However, if we do find that out, then we should take action against the department head, essentially, I feel, or the supervisor or manager, because it shouldn't be allowed.
How you gonna take action? You don't have something in place.
I have one suggestion that maybe would help with that. In Topeka, when we had the issue of nepotism that was occurring, there was a requirement that the director that was doing the hiring of a person that was a family member would need to request permission from the county manager, city manager at the time. I would have to sign off, even if it was a different department that a family member was being requested to work for. I then had to sign off the county manager saying that a supervisory relationship would not exist. We did have situations where within the fire department, for example, we had a very large fire department. They would work in a different battalion on a different shift so that they would not end up underneath a family member for supervision purposes. And so that put a lot of more light onto the fact of this employee being a family member to avoid that possibility. I agree with you 100%. It is a concern to have any family member supervise another family member because it can go both directions regarding a supervisor can be harder on their family member and the family member that's underneath that supervisor can get away with stuff. And so it's very important to have control over that. So we could add a form that would need to be signed off by the county manager to allow the hiring of a family member within a department. And the department director would sign off that they understand that this would not cause a direct supervision relationship.
Well, that's something. We need some type of policy here in Harnett County on nepotism. And nepotism tend to take opportunities away from other qualified employees. So I'm saying that that's something that shouldn't happen. And it has never been addressed, but I'm here and I'm addressing it because it's totally unfair.
Yeah. So, and how far down would we want to say grandparent, parent, child? Like what?
Usually three levels.
3 levels? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I've got
So
that.
other than addressing that, I think you did a wonderful job.
Thank you. Thank you. So any other questions?
Any further
Or
questions for
concerns?
Ms. Lane? Okay, so I think we basically had 2 suggestions going forward, if I remember correctly. So
Yes. Yeah, and have those notes down.
have those reflected in what we will consider next week.
Okay. And I'll get those updates back out.
Would you like that on consent or as a separate item, Vice Chair?
Let's put it on as a separate item since we'll have those 2 changes to make sure they meet the expectations
Understood.
that were
Thank you.
forced.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lane. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have discussion of the revised nonprofit committee bylaws, policies, and funding. Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. A couple of new items that I want to make sure and discuss as we look at this. It did not mention at the last meeting that found out that the company that the North Carolina Community Foundation has a fee that they charge as it relates to the management of our funds. They have a 10% fee that they charge. In other words, if we were to give them $75,000 to administer, they would have a $7,500 fee, which obviously reduces how much money is really going out to our nonprofits. Also, based on one thing we need to make sure and be aware of, if we bring it in-house and have our county committee making the decision, as the county accept funds that individuals provide, those are not tax deductible. There is a difference between us and a 501c3 organization, so therefore they can gift it to us, but they will not receive a tax benefit of donating to a charity, so to speak, so forth. I think that based on what I've seen so far, and that if we decide through the budget process to provide funding for nonprofits this year, my recommendation would be is that we do it internal. We've created the policies and the bylaws to be able to do so, and at this point, to make sure that our money goes to the nonprofits where they need them rather than paying another organization to manage it. That would be our better solution at this time. If it got to a point where we were giving larger sums of money and it was a harder task for us to manage, then we could always revert back and consider the foundation. And this is all predicated, of course, if you decide to provide the funding in the budget for nonprofits. But if you do, my recommendation would be to have it done internally.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Trout. I think that's, I think it's the best way to do it. When you allow the citizen of this county to be involved in this. Because if we select a person from each district, they make the decision, but the final decision still comes from the board. They don't have the final decision. What they would do is make the decision of who should get funding, and then that report will come to the board, and the board will make the final decision whether to give the money or just not give the money. One thing I got to stress, I guess I'm talking a lot, but somebody got to say it. Each organization should have a 501c3, and it should be set up. If they're asking for money, they should give the reason why they need the money, and then give a report when, after we've given the money to them, within 5 or 6 months, come back and give a report of how that money was spent. Because I'm not going to sit here and vote for this nonprofit if we don't have some good guidelines as to how we do it. But it's not been voted in yet. That's just my opinion of how we should do it.
And I as well realize I'm only one member of this board, but, and I do agree with you, I just could not in good conscience see us taking taxpayer money and giving it to this organization, they deducting 10% of it for whatever cost they wanted to say that was for. I personally would like to go back to the comments that Mr. Langley made several meetings ago about exploring the option of making this a public-private partnership. That way, they could become a 501c3 organization. Private donations could be made that would be tax deductible. I realize it would involve a little more work, but it could be modeled after what we, the premise that we've done with our economic development group. I know we just changed the name, so I won't try to say it because I'll probably mess it up. But at any rate, I would really like to see us look into that and see if that might be something feasible going forward.
Create a brand new organization is what you're
Right.
referring to.
That is what I would kind of like to have some feedback on. But again, I realize I'm only one member of this board.
Nothing wrong with having more than one option to look at. I'm agreeable with having more than one option to look at how we do this, because however we do it is taxpayers' dollars. We're spending. We must be really careful how we spend taxpayers' money.
I would have to agree though with the public-private partnership. I mean, that would possibly open up some more income avenues for, so I like that idea.
So as Stratus, you and staff have opportunity to explore that and bring some
Right.
information back to us when it's.
Yeah, we'll bring it
ready.
back when we're prepared to be able to consider that.
Right, and I don't know that there's a big rush on that, depend what we decide to do with regard to funding. Doesn't have to be necessarily
Right.
tied with that. This
I'll bring up an option as it relates to that when we go through the budget.
Sounds good. Thanks, sir. Anything else on this topic? Okay, item 8, discuss fiscal year 24-25 recommended budget. Ms. McFadden, Mr. Trout, Ms. Honeycutt.
All right, I'm going to start, and Lisa's going to come up as well, just to be able to answer questions as it relates to the items. I sent a memo on Friday evening related to the issues, and I've also laid a copy at your desk. We have about 7, 8 items that we need some guidance on from the board. And so I'm going to go through those items and see if there is consensus today as it relates to the items. And if not, obviously, we have further meetings in the future to try and figure it out. So the first item that I have is decision on the West area increase in their tax levy rate. I was brought up by one member that 2 cents increase might be enough for this year versus the 4 cents they requested. And so I'd like to know if the board has a preference as to what that increase should be.
I recommend 2 cents.
And if I might ask a question, I understand part of the issue with West End is that it serves Cumberland County, a small portion of Harnett County.
Correct.
And that the rate that is paid by citizens in that district who live in Cumberland County currently is 4 cents higher than
Yes.
residents who live in Harnett County. So I guess my question is the purpose of this request just to make it equal from
Yes.
citizens who live in Harnett or
Yeah, as it was.
Cumberland, or is this a need that they have?
I think that it is a desire to have the Harnett County residents pay a similar rate in their taxes than, they have a need, in their opinion. They have equipment and so forth that they would utilize this for. But it also primarily has been expressed by the chief as a desire to have equal pay for equal provision of service, in their opinion. We increased it 1 cent last year. So this would be incrementally increasing it. We could look at and revisit it again next year if we set it at 2 cents for this year. And I know that from a prior conversation, since this area is covered by Chairman Morris, he was the one that expressed an interest to see that it go at 2 this year. Just to help out with the conversation, since he isn't
So
available today.
his thoughts were to go with 2 this year?
Yes, his thoughts were to go with 2.
Mr. Weatherspoon feels the same way. I'll agree then. I think a gradual, if we're going to look at this, a gradual increase would be my preferred way to go.
Okay.
Commissioner McCoy, you okay with that?
Well, if we're gonna do it, I think it should be gradual.
So let's go, let's
Okay.
include 2
Thank
as
you.
we move forward.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, the next item that is on our list, that it needs to be, it's been discussed on whether or not to provide an allocation to the Boys and Girls Club of $50,000 to fund their after-school program, and just need to know if the board would like to keep that in the budget or to eliminate it.
Since they've gotten two appropriations of 50,000 each in the last two budgets from the state, why do they need another 50? I say we eliminate it.
That was my question as well. Did they not get a $50,000 allocation from Senator Bergen this last go-around?
They did, and that's originally when they talked to us back in November, they had requested 100,000 allocation from the county. And because they received that funding from the state, I reduced their request to 50,000. So that's why we are looking at a $50,000 figure versus 100,000 that was originally provided as a request.
But how much did they raise when they had their fundraiser earlier this year?
I'm not sure, sir. I can't answer
It
that.
was well over 50,000.
But I gotta say this. These nonprofit organizations, we have not put together a nonprofit bylaw package. Why are we giving money to nonprofit? Especially when we need money for the school system. I don't think that we should be giving any nonprofit this year money until we have bylaws in place. Now, I've said that more than one time. You all sit up here and you vote on this stuff, and here we are with the budget for this year. We got a lot of things to work out, especially for the school system. So I say no
I agree with Commissioner McCoy.
this year. I'm not opposing to if things were in place. We don't have things in place, and we're not in a position to be giving away money to anybody right now because we got to look out for the school system and other things in our county employees and all of this. What's on our agenda to do as a board? I'm saying no. If you give it to them, you got to give it to others.
I'll go ahead and agree with you, Ms. McCoy. However, I've been chastised, and you've chastised the rest of this board for the last 2-3 years now since we disbanded nonprofit funding. So
Yes, that's true.
Without a policy.
Without a policy, we shouldn't be giving money to nonprofit.
Yeah, the last action by the board in 2021 eliminated any nonprofit funding. That has not been changed. Therefore, we either got to change that or we got to stick with that. And since we don't have a policy or an organization to administer the disbursement of nonprofit funds, and especially, as Commissioner McCoy said, since we've got close to a $6 million shortfall in the school system. This item and the next item, the 75,000 nonprofit, I don't see how we can afford to do that. I think we need to visit that, after the budget year, after the budget is approved.
Mr. Trout, sounds like no for me on that one, and I would agree with Commissioner Weatherspoon if that would go on to the next item as well, I believe.
Okay. All right, we will remove those from the budget.
Mr. Dickinson, Commissioner, I don't mean to chastise you, but I believe in doing things right.
I agree.
And I'm sitting here for the people, not for me.
Right. We can always make a decision to add that back in if we come up with a policy. We can reconsider.
Once we work through how we're going to approach it.
Okay. Thank you. The next item, as we were looking at decisions that were made related to cost of living increases for staff, originally I considered a 4%, and that was mentioned, but based on the way the budget went and the needs we had, I lowered that to a 3%. Obviously, we want to continue to stay competitive as it relates to our neighbors, but what we were looking at, it was brought up as a concept right now. Currently, the budget has a 3% cost of living increase for all staff members, and just want to know if the board would like to change that number from 3 to 4 or not?
I say we leave it at 3. That's what the state is giving state employees, it's 3%. You know, I think we ought to follow suit.
In addition, I forgot to mention, there is also a 1.5% merit increase that they receive. So most employees would see a 4.5% increase through the year once they came upon their performance review. So the 3% is for the cost of living and 1.5% for the merit increase.
I can go along with Commissioner Witherspoon as much as as hard as I have worked to try to increase the pay of these of out-of-county employees. But now we kind of restrain because we got to come up with the shortfall that we have. And education is a very, very important tool. We cannot drop funding for education because we're going to have more kids out here going to jail and prison than going to school. That's just, maybe the wrong way to put it, but it is what it is, and we are in a difficult situation this year.
Mr. Chairman, if I can clarify, when I said a 3% COLA, I should have said a 3% COLA across the board for all employees, which would eliminate the paramedics, warrant officers, detention officers, those.
All right, that's really,
variables.
the next question.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. 3% regardless of the position. No more.
Well, I don't like it, but it is what it is.
I think
Look, we're $6 million short. We
Okay,
gotta make
we'll
some
leave-
tough, we gotta make
we'll
tough
leave-
decisions.
so. Unless I hear some objections, what I'm hearing is 3% across the board, which would take care of the last two items on this page.
Right. Okay, thank you. So the next item, there was a recommended fee creation for refundable deposit. I assume no one objects to us having a deposit required to use the new room at the Jetport. So unless I hear any objection.
How about if we do a $250 with a $125 refundable and $125 to go to the, to be used by the Jetport?
Well, they already are charged a fee, sir. So they're already going to pay a rent charge if it's an outside organization. So if anything, I would say is we would up that fee if you determined that it needed to be higher. So there's a fee they're charged to rent, and then they have to pay a deposit check in addition until the facility is used. So that fee is not listed here. It is listed on the other fees. Is that 60? I remember how much the fee to use the room at the Jetport is.
I don't have the list of fees with me.
I can look
But
it
this is the same refundable deposit that we charge to use the training rooms downstairs.
My bad.
Yes.
I skipped the word deposit. So this is just the deposit.
Yes.
Yes.
This is
I agree
just the
with
deposit.
refunding the
Okay.
deposit.
Okay.
That makes sense, but that's something the county has done for many years, right?
Yeah, we want to ensure that people take care of our stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The next item I had was, there's been discussion regarding adding additional animal shelter attendant positions. I've heard testimony as it relates to that. Each animal shelter attendant position would cause an increase of $54,000 to our budget. So I just want to make sure and provide the opportunity that if the board would like to, we obviously know that we're going to have to look at the number of attendants we have once the new building is complete. So this likely would come back, but it for sure would come back when the new building is completed. But just wanting to know whether the board wants to add that into the budget now or hold off.
My conversations with Ms. McFadden, I've gotten some numbers here. If we freeze all hiring 12 months, that will save us approximately almost 4.9 million out of the 6 million we're short. You know, to me, I think that's something we need to look at and discuss.
One caveat to what you're stating, though, is that right now, when we do our budget, we fund every position, and then we state that we're going to look at using, like in this particular budget, almost 7 million in fund balance. When those positions are not filled, that money ends up being what we save so that we don't actually use our unfunded balance. So it would be reducing the budget. You would reduce the budget amount, but that's not going to create 6 million in savings. It is on paper, it shows that it does, but in reality, we're funding all positions and then not paying out the money for those positions, so there isn't a true savings. It is a different way to do budget, and I've done it both ways in my time as a manager. You can either eliminate the positions so the budget's not high, or you can fully fund them, and at the end of the year, the expectation is that funding is then available to offset needing to use your fund balance. So now that's the big picture versus really the position itself. I think what you're arguing is we shouldn't be hiring additional staff, so you're not supportive of the adding of an attendant position. Is that accurate?
So for
I don't
clarification,
know if we can really take that position because of the way the rapid growth is in this county, and that is not slowing down. So we need to take that under consideration too. As far as the animal shelter, they need that shelter. That's something we've already voted we have to do.
Yes.
But we don't have to staff it with 2 this year.
Right.
If we staff it with 1 person, that would help them out some, because I think they're in dire need of help. I mean, we got people coming in this county every day, and a lot of these people have animals. So I think they're overloaded, but I do think that having a new shelter is the most important thing, because they are really in dire need of space. That place is too small. Let me ask, how many commissioners been down there? Been down there? I applaud you. You been down there? Good. Because when I got elected in 2014, we did the whole commission board. We took tours of everything in this county. And when I went there, it's no different now than it was back then, except that they have more animals to attend to. So that's just my suggestion.
Okay, so I'm hearing, I've heard 2 opinions here. I guess one would be that we don't fund any new position at the animal shelter, and then I've heard that we fund 1 new position at the animal shelter. Any further discussions on that?
well, I mean, I would agree with sentiments of Commissioner McCoy on they are desperately needing some help down there. They're struggling. And we heard testimony from many constituents that got up, echoed that. I would agree with funding 1 at this point in time. Just realizing that all the way around we're making cuts in order to make this work, but also with them with their hands out and their pockets empty and needing the assistance, I believe that we need to be there in order to help them out as well, at least in the interim.
Okay, so
I would suggest that we make an across-the-board policy, and then if we can alter it on a 1-by-1 basis. In other words,
Are you talking about freezing all positions again?
Yes.
See, now can I have clarification on that? Are you including like DSS and every other position that's being needed? Because I mean, with
Every
Medicaid
open-
expansion,
Every
I
open,
mean-
every open position in the county.
I just don't see that's
60
feasible, because I mean, we have to meet compliance with, you know,
There's 66 of them right now that are funded in the general fund. There's 4 that are funded in the enterprise fund. Those, we can freeze those. That money doesn't go back in the general fund to help out in anything. But there's 66 open positions in the county right now, according to the information I was given as of yesterday.
now,
So if I could ask for just clarification one more time, and if I misunderstood, please correct me, Mr. Trapp, but I thought I heard you say that we would approve the budget based on, let's say, current positions and what was it, 8 or 9, 6 or 8 additional may or may not be, but at any rate, and then a decision could be made as to what was essential, what we may could do without moving forward, and what was not filled, that money that would have been budgeted for salaries, not having those vacancies filled, that money would then go back into fund balance.
Right. What happens is we approve, in the past, the board approves a budget that funds every county position that has been approved by you. And this included 7 positions that we were looking at creating for this year that count against the general fund. We fund every position. And then as the year goes, positions are not filled, or they're filled now, someone leaves, there's a vacancy for 2-3 months. That's a savings to the budget. That savings to the budget ends up being offsetting what we have as our amount of fund balance that we project to use. So if we save $5 million in salaries because those positions stay vacant, that means we're only using $2 million of fund balance at the end of the year. So it is a different way of doing the accounting. I believe it's better to fund all positions and then take the savings that occurs, because you're really playing with fire, in my opinion, because if you fill all the positions and you don't have all the budget there, then you're going to be short. And our intent is that if the position is there on the books as a position that's needed, we should be attempting to fill it, and that's what HR is currently doing, is trying to fill every position by every means possible to find a qualified candidate. And so it's better for us to fully fund every position that we feel is necessary and then move forward. Now, we have frozen positions. We had a position that was frozen, a full-time transit driver that was in our contingency budget. I unfroze that because of the demand that Harts was having and trouble finding part-time drivers, but they could find full-time drivers. So we unfroze the full-time position in order to help us with our manning needs. And so it's been something that's been done in the past, but generally it's better to have the money there in your budget approved, and then we find the savings towards the end.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, please do.
Janice just informed me that even though these positions right now show vacancies in our payroll system, we have 24 new employees starting Monday in some of those positions. So this is
So
a
what
very,
happened to that 24?
pardon me?
If we're talking about freezing, we freezing those 24 jobs now?
No, this wouldn't go into effect until July 1.
Right.
July 1.
So our positions, like Brent stated, that we're constantly recruiting, so it's very fluid. When the departments are hiring and bringing in people, I can run a report and I can tell you at this point in time, we have 70 vacancies in our payroll system. But that does not include all the departments that have made a decision and bringing them in, and we're hiring them on Monday.
And I know there's not a definite, hard, fast answer to this question, but I also know that 24 coming in on Monday, we're going to have some going to be leaving at the same time. So I guess my question would be, approximately what number of positions would we have vacant at any given time throughout the year?
We've actually been doing better. I mentioned it in my budget message at the beginning of the budget process. A year ago, when we started our budget, we had 101 openings. When we started the budget process this year, we only had 51 openings. And so I think we average anywhere from 40 to 50 that are open at any given time, which is a pretty good amount when you have 993 employees. We're less than 5% vacant at any given time. And that it ranges across the board as far as pay that are for each of those individuals.
But with 66 yesterday and 24 new hires starting Monday, that puts us down to 42 now.
Yeah, and it is a variable that we deal with on a regular basis, and that's why we have a full-time person that does recruiting in our HR department, that in order to try and keep up with the demand that comes.
We gotta run the county. We got to run the county. We need employees to run the county. So I like your suggestion, the suggestion that you made in the very beginning. Go ahead on the hire these 24. I'm not trying to take up all the time, so, but that's just my position. I think that we should go forward with what our manager has suggested that we should do.
I agree. I think we'd be tying the county manager's hands, as well as, it sounds good, especially just looking at it number-wise with dealing with individuals. However, I don't think that is going to be a fix to the situation that we have at hand.
I know we can always revisit it, couldn't we? Could we not revisit this down the road if we have to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can always, I mean, I look back at what I went through in the pandemic, and I'm sure Lisa and Kimberly can attest to it, that you make decisions in the budget. We froze all positions when the pandemic stuff started because we weren't sure what we were going to have for revenue. There was no ARPA even contemplated at the time, and we knew we needed to make changes. So we unilaterally, I as manager, said we're freezing these hiring until we get through this and know where we're going to come out at the end. And so anytime as we study the budget throughout the year, we look at those options and determine whether or not, based on revenues that are coming in, whether or not we need to make a change as far as stopping our hiring, or even if it was really bad, doing any reductions in force. So we'll constantly monitoring that.
And if I could also add, before a department is allowed to recruit, they submit a recruitment
That's right.
request form that has to go through finance, budget, and the manager before that department before HR is authorized to advertise for that position. So it does give continued oversight of our budget revenues, and it still puts that responsibility back up to monitor the budget.
May I ask one more question, maybe make one more statement, and then I'm
Sure.
gonna get us back on target where we need to be here with regard to the animal shelter. So I'm assuming, I know we got a 5.8 million hit after initial budget had been put together that
Right.
no one was expecting or was aware of. And then, but I'm hearing that the budget is being developed based on a $7 million fund balance
Usage.
if everything was
Yeah, and
in a perfect world. So I'm assuming that we have in the past used the knowledge that we will have this unused salaries throughout the year in building that projected budget.
correct. Yes.
And
We
in
end up,
spite
right
of
now, we're
that-
on target to use a very limited amount of unfunded, a balance usage. We have now used all of our contingency, but that's pretty appropriate. We're at June. Items that have come up over the year, our contingency is now done. Any additional expenses before the end of the year would have to come from unfunded balance. And so there was already a projection of that, but really, that number is not going to be very large. The previous year, we didn't use any of the unfunded balance that was intended, that was put into the budget. And so we found that indeed, the number ends up balancing out for the most part. Then we lost our screen again.
I don't think-
Not as important
I
right
don't
now.
think I cut it off that time, I might have.
So, But yes, so that's kind of where we're at, and we can manage that as the year goes, as needed. So, and then, as you mentioned, the unfunded balance, if a decision is made to fund the additional 5.8 million for the school, that number will go up.
And then the statement I would like to make, going back to the presentation Ms. Honeycutt has given us several meetings back about the strength of our fund balance and the fact that we are on sound financial footing with regard to that, well above what our policy is regarding percentage that we need to have. So this, I guess what I'm trying to say is that this method of building this budget obviously has been successful in the past. If we weren't looking at this 5.8 million hit that was unexpected.
Yes,
you know,
definitely
we
unexpected.
wouldn't even be having these discussions probably. So, anyway. Okay, but back to the point at hand. Animal shelter attendant. So am I hearing that we want to include one new position in the budget? Okay.
Okay.
We'll put one.
So we will add hiring one additional animal attendant into the budget. Next item's a little easier. It is our solid waste roadside cleanup crew. I brought this forward. This funding comes from our enterprise funds, does not affect our general fund. Believe that this program will provide us a leg up in keeping our roadsides clean. In addition, provide additional help that's needed by Chad Bean at our various landfills to keep our landfill area cleaner. I think this is a win-win and will put us in a much better position to keep our county clean, so to speak. So if there's no objections, that's the last individual item unrelated to the schools.
Based on the fact that this would come from our solid waste enterprise fund, which Mr. Bean has done a great job of putting on sound financial footing as well, I would be in favor of that. I think we're good with that.
Okay, we'll put those into the final budget. The last item relates to the determination of the covering of the low wealth funding that was not provided by the state this year based on the formula. So we spent time, I say we, Lisa, Coley, Kimberly especially, trying to figure out this formula. And I provided in a memo the basic tenets of what that formula relates to. And it relates to three factors. We first look at our property values. Those are unfortunately 2 years behind. They lag as to when they're in, as one of the inputs into the formula. We had a large jump in property values, which came from our revaluation. And so that revaluation increased our number as far as our valuation. They then have a weighted sales assessment number that's added into their formula. Ours was 88.12. That's important because that reduces how much our tax levy, effective tax levy, ends up being. So if number 3, it takes our 0.591 per 100 assessed tax levy and add that 88.12 to it, reduces in providing a modified tax levy rate of 0.5210, which ends up being below the state average tax levy rate of 0.5420. So it ends up being a combination this year for us of higher valuations, caused a modification to our weighted sales assessment, which caused our tax levy rate to be reduced below the state average. And when you're below the state average, the state says you should be helping more with your schools based on this formula. So Lisa dug even deeper. She talked with some staff people at Department of Public Instruction and has been able to tell us exactly where we could have done things different and what the impact might have been. So I'll turn it over to Kimberly and let her cover it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Trout. So basically, as Mr. Trout stated, it came down to a few factors. The property value, the market value, all of that played in. So through assistance from DPI, we were able to take that long calculation that I had printed out and provided to you. There's a lot of items that go into that, but there were two items that basically we were able to go back, drop in the change. So had the tax rate, because that is one of the measurements that the DPI takes, had the tax rate been shifted from 0.591 to 0.616, that would have given us the tax rate average that we would have been equal to the state average, and that would have kept the full funding in place. The other side of that would have been the year of that levy. When we set that tax rate, had we left the tax rate at 0.591, had we given the schools, and hold on, let me get the number, had we given the schools an additional $11,876,834 to meet the average state pupil allocation, that would have saved us the $5.8 million in funding. So it came down to what we gave and or your tax rate. And so I know that throughout one of the present pages of the PowerPoint presentation that I provided to you, the county has been trying to put an additional, has tried to go up on the per pupil count to provide more current expense. But we're also putting an additional $2.4 million over for capital maintenance items to assist the school. Those are items that the county does not get credit for. That does not tie into any current expense funding calculation whatsoever. In addition, we're also we are continuing to set aside our reserves and our fund balance so that we can go in and construct schools, because the county, through the statute, is responsible for construction of capital buildings for the school system, and that includes your schools. With the market the way it has been, the cost of construction going up, projections that we had for the cost has exceeded exponentially, as well as our borrowing rate. So as we had talked about, everything kind of ties into it, but the two main factors when we were discussing with DPI came back to the tax rate and or the levy and the current expense allocation. So, in the end, it just boiled down to those two, either increasing that levy up a bit or increasing the current expense allocation over $11 million.
So unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. The calculations that have been pulled together, we're at about 5.8 million short. We have right now in the budget, in order to put a number in, we currently have that 5.8 million. It's actually a little specific number Lisa can quote.
$5,882,183.
So that amount has been placed in our budget in contingency. And the reason that at this point, unless a decision is made regarding any cuts to the budget, any tax increase that's decided upon, it's put in there as use of fund balance. And we put that number in contingency because we know from discussions with our legislators that that's still being pursued as to whether or not the state will assist us. If we have it in contingency and then the state decides to provide some funding back to us, then we don't need to pull it all out of contingency, and it would just go back to our fund balance. But this way, we ensure that the amount is there if the state doesn't provide us any of that additional funding. And I think Kimberly did a calculation, and we would be, I think, right around 23% of fund balance if we were to use the full amount that's in the contingency amount right now. So we would still be above our policy of 20%, as was mentioned by Vice Chairman a minute ago. Obviously, this is a big decision of the board to make. If there's any additional information that you need, be happy to work on that for the next meeting.
Well, and I hate to give you more work to do, but actually there is, at least from my perspective. I realize this is an unusual time. As I said earlier, I realize that initial budget draft and all the work that went into that was done before we were aware of this. But as I worked through some of that projected budget this weekend, I couldn't help but come across some things that, at least to me, whereas they're good things and things that would be beneficial, have to wonder, are they really needs for next year? When we're already looking at a huge hit here, possibly. And without going into a lot of examples, just like, for example, we have in the budget to provide funding to repaint the inside of a building. Is that not something that can wait another year? Is what I'm saying. Or is that really something we've got to have this coming year in light of the fact that we're looking at this 5.8 million that we didn't anticipate? So I guess what I would like to say, would there be an opportunity for you, and I know we're drawing to a deadline of at the end of the month, but an opportunity to go through and look at some of those things like that might be able to wait for another year, that we might could reduce the hit on our fund balance?
Sure, I mean, we can do that. The thing that I would ask, though, is can you give us a target? Obviously, I've been through plenty of facilitating budget cuts based on needs. It would really help if we have a target. And would you like us to find $1 million in changes?
5.8 million.
Well, that would.
There's a target.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment.
Thank you, Matt.
But that would mean changes to our service level if we were to go to that level, because that's more than just the new positions. That's a major change. So I guess we could look at 1 million and what that would generate, maybe 2 million and where those changes would need to be, and see where that puts us and whether or not you're willing to accept those types of changes.
At least from where I'm concerned, if I had the option, a 1 million and 2 million option to look at, I would certainly like to look at it. And it's hard for me to say, I'm like, man, I'd like to get a 5.8, but I also realize that impacts services.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think you should look at it, see if there's any other way to pull some funding out, because I think that our fund balance shouldn't take all the hit. Because you have too many disasters happening across this world now, not just this country, but all over the world. No one knows. I remember Matthews, when it came, flooded out a whole area going towards Colon County. They had to go in and pull the people out of their homes, and they lost everything on the first level. I'm not predicting that, but we don't know. It's all in God's hands. So, but we do have to protect our funding for the county, and we got to run this county. So I think that's something you can bring us a report back and see if there's anything there worth checking into, except for the things that we have already agreed to here today. We've already agreed to the employee for the animal shelter. We're in the process of building another animal shelter. We need another school. We've got to find a way to keep on track for doing what we have to do to run this county.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a recommendation. Seeing that Chairman Morris isn't here, and obviously we need some more discussion and to go back to the drawing board. We have a work session on June 25th. I would like for us all to hopefully shoot that as a target date for us to come back and revisit this. And I understand that the last day would be Friday, the 28th of June. Is it possible for the other commissioners if we could do an emergency meeting on Friday, the 28th of June, and order to vote on this. That will give us ample time and at least push it out as far as we possibly can go.
I make a suggestion that I agree with what you're saying about the 25th, but could we also go ahead and say that that could be a voting meeting?
And
And then
actually,
if we need the emergency meeting on the 28th,
Okay.
we can decide that on the 25th.
yeah, I would prefer that because there's a couple things that I was informed of as I walked into the meeting. Our budget director won't be available on the 28th, and the information has to be put into the computer prior to that date. So we really do need to make our decision on the
Where you
25th.
And our
She's-
system is going to be down on
Yes.
the 27th and the 28th, that Thursday and Friday, because we're upgrading the system, so we won't be able to
25th,
key
we have to
anything in.
decide. So we'll make the 25th an action meeting.
Do we need to have a special call meeting prior to the 25th?
No, as long as we enter on the agenda that a vote will be taken on the budget, that any item that's in a work session, you can annotate, this is going to be an action item.
Yeah.
As long as you publish it as such, you can take the action necessary. Is that right?
That's
Counsel?
correct. That's correct.
That would be my recommendation.
So we'll plan to look at this over the next 2 weeks and bring this back on the 25th for action by the board. Get our approved budget before the end of the fiscal year.
If we approve it on the 25th, can you get it put in before the system goes down?
I will do my very best. If you approve it on the 25th, I will have a budget ordinance done. We'll already have all the changes based on what you tell us going up to that date, and then you'll be able to approve that budget ordinance on the 25th. Anything else other, like the rest of the big budget document, we can make that change after the 1st. We just need you to approve the budget ordinance before then.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and everything I've heard sounds fine with me. I would just ask that as soon as y'all are able to identify some of those possible cuts that we might use, that you could get that
Yes.
information to us so we can work through
Yeah,
it.
so you can
a little
review
bit.
them. Understood.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McFadden and Mr. Trout and Honeycutt. County Manager Report, Mr. Trout.
The only item I have is to let the board know that I leave this afternoon for a Gettysburg Leadership Training event. Obviously, I'll be meeting with Kimberly and Lisa before I go to start working through this. But I'll be out of the office through Friday and then back in Monday. But I wanted to make sure you're aware of it. It's a very high-level leadership training event. Received a scholarship to be able to attend this, and so excited to get this opportunity for some good leadership training.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Do we have, thank you for your report. Do we have need for a closed session?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board go into closed session for the following purpose: consultation with and instructions to the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating a proposed contract for the acquisition of real property. Motion's made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11A5.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Go to closed session. business come before this board?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.
All right.